Good morning, guys. Well, we are watching Idalia make landfall. It's 4:16 in the morning at my location here in Arizona. And this thing has strengthened from a category, well, actually a category 1 when I went to bed. Woke up and this thing's now a category 4. Just a few miles from the coastline, so it's already impacting the Big Bend part of Florida. That's this area right here in northwestern Florida. Not quite the Panhandle, but right as you go into the Panhandle. So, yeah, big deal as this thing's making landfall. Here's a satellite presentation of the eye wall. You can see it's already, for all intents and purposes, touching the shore. They're seeing flooding in Clearwater, Florida, way down here, right in this area along Clearwater Beach. It's a barrier island here. There's some flooding going on down here, inland flooding with regard to storm surge. So this was a strong storm. It is a strong storm. It's far from over. It's just getting started with regard to landfall, and here it is on Zoom Earth. This is not necessarily real time, but it's close. Hold on just a second here, guys. Checking something out. I gotta check out this. Yeah, it looks like it's. Excuse me. It's early in the morning. Forgive me. I'm not 100% awake yet. Getting there. Over here at wendy.com. Yeah, like I said, here's a radar loop as this thing intensified from I believe a category 3 to a category 5. Wow. Hold on just a second, guys. I'm checking on something here. Trying to find some other data. Be right with you. This is a loop from just a few hours ago. Actually, not a few hours ago. A few minutes ago. So it did strengthen. It's even stronger. Inland flooding and storm surge is going to be quite a situation here. I'm going to show you guys where this is making landfall. I'm hoping that most people got out of the way. We talked about it briefly in yesterday's video. I'll show you guys on Google Earth, place that I've located that's probably going to be impacted the hardest. At least this is one area right here, Keaton Beach. I want to talk about this area here. It's an RV campground and pavilion. Hopefully there's nobody in this area. I do see structures here that are obviously at sea level. They're going to be taking on at least 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts. It's going to be tornadic-like at times. They're going to be right in the middle of the eye wall. In fact, they're starting to feel it right now. But the big thing also is storm surge. right in this area here. You can see water is going to be pushed up this canal, which is not going to be necessarily a big deal, but coming in here to Keaton Beach in these little canals and waterways is going to be highly problematic. It probably already is. Anchors out RV campground, this area here, you can see solid structures. Some of these are not movable RVs and stuff like that on wheels. Those are homes right on the water. That is at sea level, 0, not at 1 foot above sea level, not 5 feet above sea level. That is at sea level, 0. So that's a community right there. And yes, they're going to be taking on storm surge. They already are. They have to be based off the view of this radar. That is unbelievable. Look at the satellite presentation here. Are you serious? So this thing did, again, as we talked about in yesterday's video, these waters here are some, not all, but some of the warmest waters in the entire world. The only warmer waters that I know of are like in the Persian Gulf area, over in that part of the world. And those waters are, not much warmer than here, maybe low 90s. This is in the 89, like 89.1, 89.2 degrees, right in this area here in the Big Bend area, and over, towards the Florida Panhandle. All these waters in here are upper 80s, close to 90, not quite 90, but close. And you can see with the onshore flow has arrived, and that's what we were looking at on Google Earth. These areas here hopefully were evacuated 100%, especially see that Keaton Beach right there. That's what I was looking at over here on Google Earth. This area right here, they're dealing with a seriously strong hurricane. Now these RVs you see right here are movable. Chances are they're not even there, which is good. These over here are solid structures, so they're not going anywhere. And you can see boats, people, which is cool, during normal times. That's a lot of fun, to pull the boat right up to the back of your house. I mean, that's awesome. But during a hurricane, it's the exact opposite. So anyway, here's Cedar Island, Keaton Beach. This is the direction of the eye wall. Power outages. Wow, and this is only getting started. In fact, let me refresh the page. Yep, just eclipsed 100,000. So now looking at 107,000, just over 107,000 customers in Florida alone. And most of those, if we click on the state of Florida, are consistent with the landfall area right in here. That's where the majority of the power outages are right now. But they're not going to be limited to there. You're going to see power outages as the day progresses, and the morning progresses for that matter, because this storm is moving, I think at 17 or 18 miles an hour forward speed. Storm surge is the big deal, guys, because this is at sea level. Obviously this sits right on the water, so we're in between. The only good thing, the supermoon is coming up right now. That obviously influences water too, but we're in between. They are in these areas. They're in between low tide and high tide. And that's had an impact on how much water has came in. But they're going from low tide to high tide as the storm makes landfall. It's expected to remain a hurricane, believe it or not, in southern Georgia. Are you serious? It could be a Hurricane 1 in southern Georgia, and more than likely will be, because this thing is moving. Check this out. North-northeast at 18 miles per hour. So it's moving along at a pretty good clip. And there's a chance, check this out, there's a chance that this storm could come out and make a big sweeping circle as it goes along the east coast here, the southeast coast of, well, through southeast Georgia. And you can see there's a hurricane warning over here in southeast Georgia and South Carolina, and then the blue represents tropical storm warnings. But I saw a graph earlier today or yesterday where there's a possibility of over 10-12 inches of rain in parts of eastern North Carolina. But this thing could sweep back out and make a circle and come back towards Florida, possibly. And you can see 3 to 5 foot storm surge along southeast Georgia and South Carolina and places along North Carolina too. Just a really big storm that this is a classic example of, well, number one, the absence of wind shear. If there was wind shear, in fact, let me see if I can pull some up just to see how much is in this area. Here's the storm right now. This is showing a Category 3, so maybe it just hasn't been updated yet. I do not know. Wind shear. It's in wind shear right now. Wow. You know what? That's rare, guys, because I'm sorry, the red lines, let me be more explain. The red lines are wind, okay? Upper level winds. And hurricanes don't do well when there's a strong flow of upper level winds, crosswinds. That's what these are, crosswinds. That's wind shear. And it causes the storm to become lopsided. And these storms have to be perpendicular. So you can see down here, as the storm is gaining momentum, these green lines represent an absence of wind shear. There was no wind shear there. But where it's at right now, there's substantial wind shear. That's probably why we don't see the eye wall. But this storm it has grown exponentially just in less than 24 hours. This is forecasted to be a Category 2. Are you serious? A Category 2 in southern Georgia? You can see 100-mile-an-hour winds in southern Georgia. Wow. So this is going to impact a wide area: Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, over the next 24 hours. Again, as you can clearly see, this thing is making landfall as I do this video. And hopefully everybody got out of these areas. There's no cameras along this area in the Big Bend. It's thankfully for the sake of this hurricane's landfall, it's not a super densely populated area. But there's plenty of people here along the shoreline. It's a beautiful area. You got Keaton Beach, which is going to be taking the brunt of the eye wall. Fish Creek, these areas down in through here, again, aren't necessarily densely populated, kind of look like swamplands, but there's going to be storm surge in this area that should not affect a whole lot. Now, Steinhatchee River is more than likely, if it's not already rising. And as you can see, these homes and places are maybe at best a couple of feet above sea level. Some of them are right on the water. So all of this area here could see substantial storm surge rise over the next couple hours, maybe 3 tops. Look at this here. You've got homes right on. That's for a boat. That's a dry dock for a boat. So water probably won't get up into these homes here because you can see that they are elevated. I don't know if they're going to be elevated enough. We'll see what happens. This area here, once again, could see storm surge. The water could get throttled up that river. That's called what's it called? Steinhatchee River. That's another area. They are seeing Clearwater Beach, which is way down here. They're seeing storm surge, inundation right now as I do this video by hotels right here, I believe on the barrier islands. They're seeing storm surge come across and flood the streets, and water is getting into hotels in this area right here. At least a foot or 2 of water in this area here by Clearwater. Foot or 2 of water, storm surge, inundation. And you can see how far south this area here is from the landfall. Check it out. Clearwater Beach, right down here. They're seeing storm surge, inundation from this Hurricane Idalia, that apparently overnight, which is still overnight, good grief, it's 4:30 in the morning. This thing strengthened to a Category 4. Here's the most recent radar presentation from one of the NOAA apps that I use, looking right down into the eye wall. And at this time, you could see the high functioning eye wall, and it's still a very strong storm. It's Category 4. However, as we just saw, the wind shear component, that's a very important component when it comes to following hurricanes. If there's a lot of wind shear, half the time the storm won't even form. Just keeping it real, guys. So that wind shear was not there yesterday. That wind shear just came into play within the last 10 or 12 hours. We can't forget about Hurricane Franklin, even though it's not going to impact land, at least not anytime in the near future as a hurricane. It's steered off to the north-northeast. However, at one time, the storm here in the Atlantic was a Category 4 at 8/29/2023. So that would have been yesterday. It was a Category 4 briefly. But as it's moving farther north, the waters get cooler. They're not like over here. The water is 89 degrees. The water over here is probably in the low 80s. So that's going to cause it to weaken as it moves north-northeast towards the North Atlantic. Let's look at look at the wind shear. Whoa. You can really see it on here. This is the big picture. See the red lines? That is wind shear. And you can see these are going to be also the steering currents of what's left of the storm. And you can see already the weather patterns that are being influenced by the wind shear. They're just following the line. So these are the steering currents for Hurricane Idalia. And it's following the steering currents, following the wind shear. It's also going to cause it to become a dysfunctional hurricane here in the next probably 12 hours. It's going to hang together for a while because it was such a compact, strong storm. Now it's spreading out and it's going to impact multiple states. This is not going to be isolated to this area here. This area here by Keaton Beach, north of Steinhatchee. In fact, Steinhatchee, as you can see, they're getting a big, strong onshore push right now of high winds and storm surge waters right now as I do this video. This storm is making landfall. It has to be making landfall. The eye wall's right there. I mean, look, there's the eye wall and there's the coast. So if that's not a landfall, I honestly don't know what is. So it looks like to me it's making landfall right now in that area that we just saw on Google Earth, which is right here in the area of Keaton Beach. But it's got a pretty good size eye wall that's starting to become dysfunctional. And the reason it's becoming dysfunctional, number one, is getting too close to land. And number two is the wind shear. The reason you can't see the eye wall, I'll show you. The reason you can't see the eye wall anymore like you could earlier is because of that wind shear. It's causing it to tilt. Causing it to tilt to the right just a little bit. But it's still a big, massive storm, and it's going to remain a strong storm, whether it has an eye wall or not. This thing already has a very large menu of things with regard to heavy rain, possible tornadoes. There's an area stretching from Florida all the way up into Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina that could see tornadoes today. So that's something else to be on the lookout for if you're anywhere in the southeastern United States, because the energy of this storm is going to create tornadoes, whether they make land, whether they touch land, make contact with the ground. That's another story. I was in a hurricane that produced dozens of tornadoes, and none of them touched down. But they were visible. They were tornadic vortex signatures on the radar. That was Hurricane Francis that produced, I lost count. Tons of tornadoes, but the majority of them stayed up in the clouds. This is the storm surge probability, and this is what they could be dealing with right now in this area. Possibly 8, 12, 16-foot storm surge in this area right here, right now. Those homes and things that I just showed you guys on Google Earth could be dealing with very high levels of water as the water is coming ashore right now. The high winds, the strongest winds are going to be in this quadrant. The right front quadrant of every hurricane is always the strongest. So they're getting very heavy rain right now over in north central Florida. Cedar Key, obviously, they're seeing some, got to be seeing. In fact, let's look at Cedar Key on Google Earth. I'm just curious. Cedar Key is where? Right there. And it actually kind of sticks out a little bit. Definitely a populated area down here, so I'm sure they're seeing some storm surge to some degree. There's a little airport there. Okay, well, they're going to be seeing storm surge, high winds, probably dealing with power outages right here in Cedar Key would be my guess. Well, in fact, let's look. You want to look? Let's do it. Power, Cedar Key. Right in there. Yeah, they're dealing with power outages. I'm pretty confident. Still at 100,000. Let's refresh the page. Ooh, went back up 116,000 now. This is going to continue to climb. You're going to see power outages go up into Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, as this very large Category 4 hurricane is making landfall. And a strengthening hurricane at landfall is always the worst case scenario. And what compounds the situation, making it the worst case scenario landfall of a hurricane, there's no good time for a hurricane to make landfall. None. But when it makes landfall overnight or when it's dark, that makes it even worse. So, yeah, it's worst case scenario. A strengthening hurricane making landfall at it's daylight now in Florida. It's starting to get daylight, but this thing was coming on strong, and it was dark. It was still dark outside. So that's just a terrible combination. You know, it's like tornadoes during the overnight hours when it's dark. You know, there's no good time for a tornado, especially when it's dark. But you can see this thing is spreading out. The orange you see on here represents high winds and moderate to very heavy rainfall. So Tallahassee, especially over here on the right hand side of this storm, rains I'm sure are already impacting the northeastern part of Florida, Jacksonville, Gainesville, getting up into South Georgia right now as I do this video. It's going to be an all-day situation here with regard to this hurricane moving to the northeast very quickly at 17, I think. Let's look again. I'm sorry, guys. I forgot what they said. I think it was 18. Yeah. 18 miles an hour. So hurricane warning along the northwest coast of Florida and a hurricane warning along the southeast coast of Georgia and South Carolina, as the storm will remain a Category 2 hurricane in southeastern Georgia. Wow. That's a strong storm. And again, you know, unfortunately, any nighttime hurricane, even though this was early morning, it was dark as the eye wall was approaching, and the floodwaters were starting to come in overnight. So any type of component, when it's dark outside and the power goes out, it's just not a good environment. There's nothing good about it. So you can see the eye wall. I would say, what wouldn't you? The eye wall's right there, as we saw from the wind shear. The wind shear is what's happening is the reason you can't see the eye wall. It's really still there in some capacity, as you can see here on this radar loop. I would say that made landfall right there at Keaton Beach. Check that out. Look, right here. Yep, right there. There it is. I would say that made landfall, wouldn't you? It looks like it to me. But the reason you can't see the eye wall on a satellite presentation, in fact, we'll go to satellite right here. Is that satellite? Yeah, that's satellite. Yeah, you can't see the eye wall here. It is because the wind shear has got the cloud tops leaning a little bit. Let's see which direction they're going. That's Franklin. And Idalia, once again, Franklin's not going to impact land. Franklin's a strong storm. It's been a long duration. It's been out there for a few days. It's moving a little slower than Idalia. It was a Category 4, then a 3, now a 2. But it's going to remain out in the Atlantic Ocean. And you can see why. It's getting caught up in those steering currents, those wind shears. Watch, we'll turn the wind shears on. That's what's going to drive. Well, these aren't the steering currents per se. Let me see if I can find the steering currents. Where are we at? I'm sorry, guys. I'm still half asleep here. No, it's the vortices. There's steering currents. Okay, see why the storm's going that way? Those are the steering currents. So that's why they knew the storm was going to make landfall in the area that it did, because the steering currents were strongest right there where it's making landfall. So there you go. That's why it went there. That's what's steering the storm. There's always something that you can't see that's in play, and these are the steering currents for the weather patterns you see up here north. And this is Franklin going on over here, and Franklin's going to slowly drift off to the North Atlantic. But those are the steering currents, and that's Franklin and steering currents for this one. Yeah, you can see it's following the steering current. See the arrows? That's where it's headed, and it's going to go right across the Florida, North Florida Panhandle area, North Florida, Southeast Georgia. Yeah, it's a very powerful storm that I would say. I don't know the official landfall determination, but it looks like it did to me. But looking at the satellite and the wind shear, that's why you can't see the eye wall anymore, because now it's starting to get a little bit lopsided, but it's still got a lot of forward momentum. And this is a very big, powerful storm that just made landfall. I would say it did, right? Or it's getting close. You know, they're feeling storm surge along this area here. And even if there were cameras to use in this area, there's probably no power. Hurricane warning right along this area. All this red you see stretching all the way down past Bradenton. Clearwater seeing storm surge right now as I do this video. From what I understand, and it should have, Tampa Bay, I think, drained yesterday. We've seen that happen before. As the storm, let me see if I can find it here. Where are we at? Okay, that's Franklin and Idalia. As the storm right here, as the storm was approaching, and the offshore flow, when the eye wall was just south of this location, the offshore flow probably drained Tampa Bay again. I think it did, at least, temporarily, but I'm not sure. I wasn't there. But Tampa has been known to drain from these storms that get in the Gulf of Mexico that are hugging the west coast when the eye wall is south of Tampa and the offshore flow is turning counterclockwise, then especially if it's in conjunction with low tide, the Tampa Bay will drain, and I think it did yesterday right here. The water will disappear. It's kind of weird looking, to be honest. Saw it with Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma was coming up from the south, and that counterclockwise rotation during low tide drained Tampa Bay, and it slowly comes back. It's just kind of weird to see, but here it is on Zoom Earth, and it's, again, got a very impressive satellite presentation. It's a big storm, big, powerful storm. Let's check the power outages again. Yeah, this is going to continually climb. 130,000 right now in Florida, state of Florida. Most of those up here in the Big Bend area. You can see they're starting, and these are counties that are dealing with the power outages by county. There's 6,000 out in that county, 5,700 in that county, and you can see they're following the path of Hurricane Idalia, and that's what they'll continue to do. And we'll probably see power outages all along this path here today. More than likely power outages today in southeast Georgia, eastern South Carolina, and possibly, I don't know, to some degree, I don't know what, in North Carolina, we'll probably see power outages as well. I saw a rain total, which was quite stunning yesterday, to be honest. 12 inches of rain in parts of eastern North Carolina forecasted for today. So we'll see. We'll see. It's a big, powerful storm making landfall as a major Category 4 hurricane right now as I do this video. This is a satellite presentation, infrared, over here at windy.com. Let me get this cranked up. Boy, that thing just spread out, and see very heavy rains across north central Florida. That's a big storm. And just goes to show you the warm waters once again really get these things going. They do every single time if there's no wind shear. And there was no wind shear as this thing was developing down in the southern Gulf of Mexico. That's what allowed it to develop, the absence of wind shear. And then, of course, the warm waters down there, too, upper 80s. Up here, you're getting close to 90-degree water. So even with the wind shear, the warm waters gave this thing the ability to strengthen. Right now, it appears to be making landfall, but it's going to affect this entire area of the Big Bend and not only Keaton Beach. This seems to be where it's making landfall right now, but this entire area is going to see storm surge to some degree, and they're calling for that over here at the National Hurricane Center peak storm surge forecast. Um, they're the purple, which is right where it's making landfall to the north and south of the eye wall. And of course, right where the eye wall is at, 12 to 16 feet. Now, those are going to be on the high end. I'm pretty confident. 8 to 12 feet over here. Yankeetown looking at possibly 7 to 11, 8 to 12, 12 to 16. And they are seeing storm surge right now in Clearwater. Where's Clearwater? Right down. There's Tampa Bay. Clearwater's right in here. They're seeing storm surge right now in Clearwater, and the eye wall's way up here. So storm surge is going to be a big deal in these areas. Absolutely, it already is. It's already starting. Here's a look at it. It's on Zoom Earth. And the path of this storm, if you're in the path of this storm, even if you're over here in southeast Georgia, you're going to see high winds today. You're going to see heavy rain today. You're going to see hurricane-like conditions. This thing is supposed to be, as you can see right here, a Category 2 hurricane with 100-mile-an-hour winds in southeast Georgia. Are you serious? A Category 2 in southeast Georgia? That's because it's moving so fast. It's not going to have a chance to unwind by the time it gets into southeast Georgia. That's why. Because of the forward speed. The forward speed is going to allow that. If it was a slow-moving storm, by the time it reached southeast Georgia, it would be nothing but a tropical depression probably. But the very fact that it's moving forward at 18 miles an hour, number one, it's going to minimize the amount of total rainfall in this area because it's moving so fast. And it's going to allow it to remain a hurricane clear up into southeast Georgia, 150 miles away, because it's moving quite quickly. That's a very big, impressive storm. Big storm that did strengthen and created a worst case scenario situation. You like to see these storms weaken at landfall, not strengthen, but this one here, it strengthened at landfall. It's strengthening. It's probably not strengthening right now, but it's still a very powerful hurricane. It's making landfall right now, so the situation, I'm sure, is deteriorating there in the Big Bend of Northwest Florida. Power outages are starting to rapidly accumulate as this thing makes landfall. Rainfall totals are, it almost looks like right there the eye wall was on land, right? What do you guys see? North of Steinhatchee, right? Right there, is that the eye wall? It's part of the eye wall. It's pretty good size still, but it's difficult to see because of the wind shear. There's a lot of wind shear that we don't see on this satellite presentation, but a lot of crosswinds in here. Crosswinds cause the hurricanes to tilt, and when they tilt, they become dysfunctional and they unwind. So it will start to unwind, obviously, when it makes landfall, like they always do, with or without wind shear. But the presence of wind shear will cause the hurricane to tilt and usually become lopsided. It will only have one functioning side, maybe a left or right side. You know how they look. It doesn't have that buzzsaw look. This one actually still has the buzzsaw look a little bit. It's still kind of round. Usually wind shear will cause a hurricane to become very lopsided, and it will not be round. That's what wind shear does. So yeah, big deal, guys. Big deal. It's 4:50 in the morning where I'm at here in Arizona. I woke up and I've started thinking about this hurricane, and I just reached over and looked at my phone, still half asleep, and I saw that it had increased to a Category 4. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I got up and I had a cup of coffee. That's all I've done. I haven't even had breakfast yet. I'll tell you what I had. I had a saltine cracker. I'm just being honest with you. I had a saltine cracker and came over and started doing a live stream. But Keaton Beach is meeting this storm head on. Keaton Beach right there. That's the area that's dealing with the, and not just limited to there too. Keaton Beach, Hagen's Cove, Big Bend right there. Steinhatchee, I would say there's going to be water throttled up through that river. They're probably dealing with rising waters right this very moment, I would say. And hopefully these folks here evacuated. Those are homes, so those are not going to be RVs that you can just move out of the way. Those are homes. I don't know if I can get a different view there or not. Can I? Yes, we can. Yeah, those are homes. Primarily at sea level, maybe a couple of feet above sea level. But you know how it is, right there along the coast. It's a beautiful part of the world to live in, right along any coastline of any ocean, any body of water, whether it's a river, a creek, a large lake. You know, that's some of the most sought after property in the world. That's why these people live here, because it's a beautiful place to live. But a hurricane, the presence of a hurricane can turn it into, at least temporarily, a very rough place to live. Hurricanes are no joke. I've been in a few. So once I started following hurricanes in 2004, I never stopped. I learned a lot about hurricanes and what causes them to be hurricanes. I wanted to know why that happened because I was in the middle of a hurricane that was very destructive. So I learned a lot about hurricanes after that. So that's what inspired me, was being right in the middle of the eye wall of one. And the storm went over my head, and I looked up and I could see the sky. And it was one of those worst case scenarios, made landfall at night. And I'm like, wow, why am I able to see the stars? You know, I didn't know anything about hurricanes at the time. I do now. But yeah, the eye wall was going over me. I could see stars looking up, and there was no wind shear, or the eye wall wouldn't have been open. Now you can see the eye wall is pretty much non-existent on this particular loop, and that's because of the wind shear, guys. The wind shear has blown the cloud tops over, covering the eye wall. That it's still there, but it's not visible, at least on this satellite presentation. I've seen hurricanes make landfall where the eye wall, like Dorian, the storm when it made landfall in the Bahamas, man, that storm, the eye wall was a perfect circle. I mean, it was perfectly round, no wind shear, but you clearly got wind shear going on here. Let's look at the power outages real quick. Yeah, it's starting to climb. 138,000 now in Florida. Wouldn't be surprised if that hits. I wouldn't even know. We'll just have to wait and see. Probably 500,000 or so. And then Georgia will be impacted by power outages. Already are in southern Georgia. See these counties down here in southern Georgia? 500 in Clinch County, 213 in Brooks County. Those numbers will more than likely go up exponentially as we move through the morning hours and the early afternoon, getting into South Carolina. Right now, there's just over 6,000 customers in Georgia without electricity, and that's from this storm right here that's making landfall in the Big Bend of Florida, which is, from what I understand, a historic event with regard to landfall of a major hurricane. Of all the hurricanes ever recorded, going back to 1851, from what I understand, there's never been a major hurricane make landfall in the Big Bend of Florida. There's been a major hurricane over here in Panama City. That was Hurricane Michael. That was a Cat 5. That's a retired storm now. But the Big Bend, from what the data has shown us, there's never been one as long as records have been kept. Now, has there been prior? Who knows? But at least in record keeping going back to 1851, there's never been a major hurricane make a landfall in this area. So you're witnessing history. You're seeing something that's never been recorded as long as we've been keeping records. That's still a very strong storm. They are dealing with some high winds in this area. That's the steering currents. In fact, let me turn that off. There's the storm right there. This is showing it Category 3. Maybe it just hasn't updated yet. I don't know. Sometimes they don't always mimic each other perfectly. But either way, Category 3 is a major hurricane with very high winds. It's got a strong storm surge component with it. So hopefully everybody got out of these areas here that are going to be directly impacted, that are being directly impacted right now as I do this video. So hopefully they got out. If not, they're going to be dealing with a lot of water for the next few hours and until the water retreats, because we're coming up on high tide. They just departed low tide a few hours ago, now going into high tide, so the water is going to remain around for a while. Then in conjunction with the super moon, you know how that influences the tides and stuff. So we got super moon, hurricane, got a whole lot going on. But right here, Cedar Island, Keaton Beach, they are dealing with the eye wall of Hurricane Idalia. Hopefully everybody got out of here. A lot of these are solid structures that are not movable. So right here, these canals, that canal, I think there's just one there. Well, there's two. Yeah, now there's more than two. Well, two primary ones. The water levels in here are up right now. They have to be, because they're dealing with the eye wall of the storm. And that counterclockwise rotation, look at that, counterclockwise is pushing water up in here. It's no telling how much water they're getting. The National Hurricane Center said there's a possibility of 8 to 12 to 16 feet in that area. I don't know who's going to be there measuring, because it wouldn't be safe to be there measuring, but they're taking on some major water right here, because the counterclockwise rotation is pushing water in, and it's going to take it right up those canals right there. So, and then not only that, the high winds. They're dealing with over 100-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, in some cases sustained. 130-mile-an-hour are gusts associated with this. That's not sustained. Well, maybe sustained in some areas, but they're dealing with at least 100-mile-an-hour winds in here, and rising water, rapidly rising water. So these boat docks here are going to be tested. Their integrity is going to be tested today. It's being tested right now. It's a very strong storm that's pushing in water. These are all solid structures. They're not moving. They're not RVs. These, even though there's a campground right here, those RVs more than likely went inland. Those are homes. There's homes. Oh, there's homes right there. Oh, wow. Ooh. That is not good. Ay, ay, ay. Man, they are way out there on a little barrier island. How do they even get out there? Oh, there's the road. Okay. Oh, my goodness. That's not good. That is not good. I just saw that. I didn't know that was there until just now. Oh, man. I hope they all got out of there. You know what? Let's just think positive. They all got out, okay? There's not that many. I mean, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, probably 25 homes, let's say, on that barrier island. Here's the road that gets them to there. There's no way you're going to be able to get out of there if you're in there now, and there's no way you're going to be able to get back to it anytime soon, because water, I'm sure, has this all flooded. That road, I'm sure, is easily flooded. This is taking on the brunt of the hurricane. Wow. Ooh, I just saw that little place right there, guys. It's so small. I was focusing on this over here, Cedar Island and Keaton Beach. Yeah, they're dealing with some big time water right in there. Look at that boat dock that's no longer there. I'm sure what's left of it's probably gone. Huh. Okay. Something going on over here. Yeah, those are very small barrier islands. I just noticed them. Is there any over here? No, not anything that's buildable. What's this here? Higgins Cove Park. Nobody lives there. Water's being throttled up that Oyster Creek, pretty sure, but there's no homes or anything there. Yeah, I just saw that little barrier. I was like, wow. Okay, we'll see how it turns out. Hopefully good. They're dealing with a powerful storm right now that's making landfall as I do this video, and that barrier island is right in the middle of this big, powerful storm. Cat 4, probably a Cat 3 by now. See the lightning above Perry, just a little bit inland. This is over here at windy.com. Watch the lightning above Perry. And there's lightning everywhere. It just showed up right here. Very dense lightning on the north wall, eye wall, what's left of the eye wall of the storm. And there's still going to be an eye wall for a while. It's just not going to be necessarily visible on satellite presentation. And the reason it's not going to be visible is because of the wind shear camouflaging the eye wall. The wind shear blows the clouds over the top, causes the storm to become lopsided and dysfunctional. When there's no wind shear, these storms, especially in 89-degree water, have big time potential. And another thing that saved this thing from becoming a Category 5 was its fast forward movement. If this thing was moving at about 5 or 6 miles an hour forward speed, it would still be down in here, strengthening to a Category 5. Easy Category 5, because this thing jumped from a 1, 2, 3, 4 very, very quickly in less than 24 hours. So that is, by very definition, the definition of rapidly intensifying hurricane, almost giving a new meaning, going up 3 levels, went from a 1 to a 4 in 24 hours. Wow. So going fast at 18 miles an hour like this one is, you can see right there, that was a good thing, because this thing could have easily become a Category 5. It became a Category 4 moving that fast. Holy cow. So major hurricane Idalia, I don't know if it's officially made landfall, guys. In my perspective, from what I see here, I would say that it definitely has, but I don't know what the official criteria is for logging these down when they make landfall. But I'm over here at zoom.earth, and it's showing the eye wall still offshore, maybe 20 miles, I don't know. And that little barrier island that we saw, what's it called? Right there. Whoa, they're on the right hand side of that eye wall. They're taking some incredible high winds right now, and storm surge. Wow. It reminds me of some of the barriers on the coast of southwest Florida when Hurricane Ida came through. There were some barrier islands out there that did not do too good during the storm and landfall, and that's what this is kind of reminding me of a little bit here. I'm trying to think positive, but I'm looking at the situation here, and that's a big, powerful storm, and it's going to do the same thing that it does everywhere else when they make landfall. It's just what they do when they're this strong. They're very powerful. They have, the ability to move a lot of water and create a lot of issues with structures. So I'm sure right now this has got a counterclockwise component like they all do in the northern hemisphere. Storms in the southern hemisphere rotate clockwise. So this one's counterclockwise, so it's pushing water up that canal. It's pushing water into this area over here. Water is rising. Cedar Keys probably seeing water rising. I'm sure they have to be. Look at that. There's that. Those are islands out here in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Not literally, but right along the coast. So you know they're taking on water rise, storm surge. Absolutely they are. Don't know how much, but they're in a very vulnerable position with regard to the right side of the storm, and the right side's always the strongest side because of that counterclockwise motion. That's still has a very impressive satellite presentation, even though it's dealing with, I'll show you guys once again, the storm's dealing with a lot of wind shear right now. Check this out. The red lines represent strong wind shear, and usually if a storm were to try to develop in that type of wind shear, it wouldn't. It would not form. But because this storm was already a major hurricane entering this wind shear, you can see the green lines represent no wind shear. So this is where it got the strongest, and then it came into the wind shear as a major hurricane. So it's going to take a little while for it to unwind. So the wind shear is going to have an impact on it, but not an immediate impact. So it's still going to cause a lot of issues. It's a big, strong storm that's got to unwind. It's going to take several hours, if not a couple, 3 days for this thing to unwind. And in the meantime, it's still going to bring copious rain to Florida, or yeah, obviously Florida, or Florida's already seeing a lot of rain, especially northern Florida, southeastern Georgia, eastern, not limited to though, but the Carolinas, both North and South Carolina. You will see some heavy rains today, high winds, especially in southern Georgia. Already seeing it. There's power outages in Georgia. Let's do a quick update on the power outage situation. Here we go at poweroutage.us. 144,000 customers in Florida right now as I do this video. That has grown by at least 10,000 since we were looking at it last. And we're starting to see more power outages in southern Florida or southern Georgia. Not that many, but some. And you can see this is getting more colorful. The darker the color, the more power outages. So 6,200 in Dixie County, 7,300 in Taylor County. This county here, let me remove that. That's Wakulla County, 11,000 customers. So these numbers are going to grow as the morning progresses. It's daylight in Florida. It's already 8 a.m. So people are able to at least see what's going on around them instead of having to try to navigate through a major hurricane in the dark. Yeah, I'd say it's made landfall, right? There's the eye wall right there, just south of Perry. Perry, Florida is right here by, yeah, here's Perry. So they're dealing with the eye wall on land. What's that, 15 miles inland? So they're right in the middle of the eye wall, or at least on the northern edge. Perry's a populated community in the Big Bend, Florida. Right there, there's Hampton Springs. Here's Athena dealing with the eye wall. So this area is dealing with the landfall right now as I do this video. So pretty big deal. Never happened before, guys. That's from what I understand. There's never been a landfall in this area right here in the Big Bend, at least a major hurricane. I think there's been smaller hurricanes, but from what I've learned in the last 24 hours, in fact, I learned it yesterday, that there's never been a major hurricane make landfall in the Big Bend of Florida. So this is now a historic event. It made landfall. It looks like to me, I think the eye wall's right there. And you can kind of still see it here, just barely, but you can still see there's an eye wall there. We got here, that's, okay, this is Franklin. And they almost look like they're feeding off of each other. I don't know, it's just weird to see two strong tropical systems like that. That's Franklin over here in the Atlantic that's going to stay out in the Atlantic. It was never going to come towards land. I mean, it started to, but the steering currents, I'll show you guys once again, these are the steering currents. These are what direct these storms. They just follow the steering currents. That's just what they do. So you can see that Franklin and Idalia are going to follow these steering currents, and eventually what's left of them will go up into the North Atlantic and could, within the next week, I suppose, impact maybe parts of the UK and Ireland. It's happened before. Absolutely. It brings a lot of rain and high winds, not necessarily a hurricane, but I've seen them travel thousands of miles and get up here into the North Atlantic. The waters are too cool up here to become any type of organized hurricane. But the rain and winds and stuff like that can still be present with the remnant low and bring a lot of rain to Ireland and the UK. I've seen it before. I'm not saying that these will, but the potential is always there. Absolutely, always there. So power outages continue to climb. Satellite presentation is still a very powerful storm as it's making landfall. Probably a Category 3 by now. That's a major hurricane making landfall in the Florida, Big Bend of the Florida Panhandle. So that's a big deal, guys. That's never happened according to historic records that go back to 1851. And the rain bands, the outer bands, let's see if we can switch this over to radar. Oh yeah, okay. Lightning galore. The outer bands expand all the way down to Cape Coral, Sarasota. And these bands are going to create a training effect of rain going through south central Florida. So the rain is accumulating right now as I do this video, a couple hundred miles away from the eye wall. And that's what's going to bring all of the rain sweeping around counterclockwise up into the Carolinas. It's already doing it. That's off the northern edge of that storm. That's still got a very impressive satellite presentation and will remain like this for several hours. So this is still a very high functioning storm that's got a lot of wind. It can produce tornadoes. It's going to produce a lot of heavy rain, high winds, and those are all going to equate to power outages. Southeastern United States could it remains to be seen. I don't know how many there will be, but there will be a lot as the day moves forward, as this storm continues to move to the northeast. The only good thing, it's moving very quickly. So yeah, there's a lot of storm surge going on right now. That's problematic. There's not much you can do about storm surge, any of it really, except get out of the way and take shelter. And hopefully they did long before, this made landfall. But the winds and rain, we've all been in thunderstorms and high winds and things like that. That's going to be an all-day event through probably northern Florida, most of southern Georgia. You can see where this thing's headed. You can see they're already getting heavy rains up here in South Georgia from these outer feeder bands that are going to be feeding the rain, feeding the high winds, and possible tornadoes. These big storms can produce widespread tornadic activity. The majority of the time, I will say, the tornadoes stay up in the clouds, but there are times that the tornadoes briefly touch down. But these big, powerful, energetic systems can produce tornadoes as well. I've seen it many times, especially off in the outer bands and not too far from the center of rotation. But you can clearly still see the center of rotation right there. I would say that it's made landfall, wouldn't you? Right there's the eye. Right over Keaton Beach. Yeah, that's not good. That's the place where it made landfall, guys, right there. So there was tremendous storm surge in this area here. Yeah, that's where it made landfall. I would say Keaton Beach. So going to Google Earth, this area here, I'm sure saw the brunt of the storm surge, probably still dealing with it because it's still going over the area. Storm surge in here going up, it's being throttled up in these canals. Those are all overflowing with water right now. They have to be. There's nowhere they can't be. The eye wall, it went right in here. It's here now. So they're probably dealing with high water. This little area here, though, I am really, wow. I don't know. I'm kind of speechless right there. They just took the brunt of a major hurricane. So and so did right here, Cedar Island. Same situation here. I mean, it's a beautiful place to live. You have a beautiful view, beautiful sunset every night. But boy, when a hurricane comes through like this, it is not good. So, and this canal here, is full, overflowing with water. I don't know how much, but we'll see later on today. If anybody can even get there today, I would doubt that these roads will be open. Most of these roads, I'm sure, are underwater at this point. And covering a long way, all this area of the Big Bend, clear down to Steinhatchee. I'm sure water's being throttled up into Steinhatchee River. This is a fairly densely populated area. Don't know how far inland the water would go. That remains to be seen. I don't know the lay of the land, but it's obviously close to sea level. Road to nowhere. Okay, I've never seen that. There it is, and it's true to its name. Road to nowhere. How about that? Okay. Why do that? Road to literally nowhere. Okay. I learned something new today, man. Horseshoe Beach. What's that look like? Ay. Obviously, again, right on sea level, there's a canal that goes right up into town. Look at that. That canal, got throttled full of water, at least up out of its banks. How high up out of its banks? That will be revealed later on today. Is that Cedar Point? No, that's Horseshoe Beach. Oh, there's little islands out here. Oh, I don't know if that's populated or not. Probably not. They're probably like little sanctuaries. That's probably, no, there's somebody that lives there. Wow. Is that somebody's private island? Okay, cool. Well, they just took on a major hurricane, so hopefully they fared well. I think there's a place down here. Yeah, here's Cedar Key. I'm sure they dealt with high winds and storm surge too, because they were right in the middle of that strong counterclockwise rotation. So water was being pushed up into here as well. Yeah, right up that canal easily. So that took on a lot of water right there. I would say they got tremendous storm surge here at Cedar Key, just from the position. They were right in the middle of one of the strong feeder bands. So storm surge there was probably very profound all through this Big Bend area, as the Hurricane Center was predicting storm surge in that area, quite possibly 12 to 16 feet. Like I said, time will tell as we move through the day. Let's check the power outages once again. 161,000. Boy, they're climbing fast in the state of Florida. We'll see Georgia start to accumulate power outages here in the next probably hour and a half, as this thing very quickly moves to the north. That's the only good thing about this storm. It's a fast mover. Remember Hurricane Harvey? I know you all do, back in 2017. The reason, number one, it was a strong storm. It was a Cat 4, I believe. But it was a slow mover. Can you imagine if this storm stalled like Hurricane Harvey did? That's how those unbelievable rainfall totals were able to accumulate, because the storm stalled right on the coast. So they saw 40, 50 inches of rain, in parts of Houston from Hurricane Harvey, because the storm just got up here and just sat there and just rained for hours and hours. And it was unbelievable. I'd never seen anything like that. This one's the exact opposite. It's a big, powerful storm, but it's moving very quickly at 18 miles per hour. So if there's a good thing about the storm, it's its fast moving forward speed. It's a runner, so it's not a staller. So here it is once again on Zoom Earth. It still has a incredible satellite presentation. You can see here the sun's starting to come up. The sun is up in Florida. It's daylight. Spring Hill, that's where we saw the pigeon right there. So hopefully the pigeon and Jenny got shelter during the storm. They're still in the storm for all intents and purposes. They're on the outer edge of the storm right now, receiving rain and I'm sure high winds, and they might be dealing with power outages there too. I don't know. Possible. It looks like their power's still on, which is good. But look for the power outages to go up as we move through the day. And I'll leave you guys with this satellite presentation right here, as the storm, from what I can tell, has made landfall. Yeah, there's the storm on land right there. I just kind of wanted to do a live as it was making landfall. I don't have access to any cameras or anything like that. Just satellite presentation, and we can kind of overlap the areas on Google Earth, and we can see the areas that are going to be directly impacted by the eye wall. And this is one of them: Keaton Beach and Fish Creek and Hagen's Cove Park and Piney Point and Cedar Key. All of these areas up here, especially south of Keaton Beach. But there was going to be a big push of water. Water's going to be throttled up into these canals as well. But there's not anybody that lives there, so not going to be too problematic, as the water will just come up and then go back down. But here you have, people live here. I mean, that's not cool. We don't want to see those places flood like that. This area here took a pretty good shot from the storm. Could have been overwhelmed by rising water, because that's just a very small, thin barrier island, and that's what happened during Hurricane Ida. Water went all the way over the island, and the winds, there's just nothing to block the winds right in here. Absolutely nothing. So I don't know. Hopefully it turned out good. But right now, guys, the hurricane appears to have made landfall, quite possibly made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane. Wow. That's never before happened in the Big Bend of Florida. So I'll leave you guys with that. I'm sorry, guys. I was looking at something else. I was checking to see. Yeah, okay. I think it made landfall. I don't know. It either made landfall as a Category 3 or a Category 4. I'm not sure. We'll have to see what the official forecast is. But either way, Category Major Hurricane Idalia has made landfall. August 30th, 2023 at around 8 a.m. Florida time, 7:30 a.m. Florida time. It's still just 5:20 in the morning my time here in Florida or in Arizona. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a super day and be safe out there.